Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Heart Centered Life live broadcast. Because leadership is an essential part of the Heart Centered Life, I thought that this live broadcast will look at and dedicate itself to looking at great leadership and how what great leadership looks like and how to be a great leader. This is actually the first installment of a two live broadcast series where I will talk about how to be a great leader and how you can actually create positive change with your ideas and creativity and lead in that sense in the second installment. So for this first installment, I was actually inspired by a short 2-minute video that came out with the Harvard Business Review that talked about what great leadership looked like, and I wanted to show that video and then expound on some of those concepts and how that relates to the Heart Centered Life and the Heart Centered Life podcast. So without much further ado, let's start with the presentation. So, what does great leadership look like, and how would we become great leaders? So, for those of you who do not know me or who are new to the Heart Centered Life, my name is Elina Ng Boyd, and I am the founder of the Heart Centered Life. I'm also the owner of a social enterprise, Elina Boyd. That is intended to increase access to information and knowledge through intellectual property laws. And I'm also a law professor, intellectual property law and property law professor at Mississippi College School of Law. And the philosophy that underlies what the project, the Heart Centered Life project is that if we wish to see any change in the world, it has to come from people like us who feel empowered and who have the tools to make change, and that change is not going to come from the state, the government, or traditional profit-driven corporations. It's going to come from people like us. And so what I hope to do with the Heart Centered Life is to give us the tools to make that change. So the Heart Centered Life project was a project that was conceptualized last year, and I've talked a little bit more about the Heart Centered Life in a previous live broadcast. But essentially, what the Heart Centered Life project tries to do is find a way to achieve a more consistent state of well-being and contribute to the world from that place in positive ways. And the way we do that is to try to understand how our intellect, cognition, our brain is aligned or relates to the heart that deals with emotions, our values, moral values, our ethics, connectedness to others, relatability, and our intuition as well. And that's essentially our gut reaction, which is why sometimes when we hear people say that we have butterflies in the stomach, or that action was a gut-based reaction, is because intuition or intuitive responses is essentially the purview of the gut area. And in a previous presentation, I also talked about how there are neurons in the gut that actually replicates the way neurons in the brain work. But really, the gut is that part of the human identity that deals with our core identity versus others, our intuition to aim for self-preservation, maintaining boundaries, and of course mobilization, having the courage to act, right? And sometimes we talk about Dutch courage, about trying to find the courage through drinking alcohol to find that courage to act. But really, essentially, the Heart Centered Life project is a way to somehow think about achieving a more consistent state of well-being by aligning our intellect, our emotions, and our intuition. So how does the Heart-Centered Life project relate to the video that I was telling you about? Well, the video is a short video. It's a 2-minute video, but the video talks about how we need to conceptualize leadership as not a one-dimensional concept, but a two-dimensional concept that takes into account morality and efficiency. And the video really resonated with me because it kind of exemplifies what the heart-centered life and leadership from a heart-centered place means, because ethics and morality is integral or essential to heart-centered living. So without waiting too long, let me play the video for you and we can continue the discussion after this video.
A deeply rooted belief about leaders is that they can be rated on a continuum from bad to great, with good falling somewhere in between. But James R. Bailey argues that this kind of thinking is flawed for 2 reasons. First, leadership is not one-dimensional. And second, we're confusing our definitions of goodness and greatness. The word good is often used interchangeably with acceptable or adequate, but in the context of describing a person, it also refers to morality, virtue, and ethics, the direction or intent of a behavior. Meanwhile, the word great often implies excellence, but it's primarily used in descriptions of unusual intensity and power. This is the force behind a behavior, and it could be either good or bad. So you now have 2 dimensions of leadership: the animating force driving others to action, and the subtle but important moral compass. From these, 4 types of leaders emerge. Obviously, no one wants to be the vacant leader, but it still happens in far too many companies. Lacking both direction and energy, even the most optimistic teams quickly lose the motivation to reach for their goals under this kind of leadership. The amiable leader has the best intentions and creates a pleasant place to work. However, without the drive of greatness, these happy teams tend to stagnate and don't end up accomplishing much. The maleficent leader is the opposite, having greatness to get the job done, but lacking the moral direction to do what's right. This creates excitable, combustible situations with the real potential to cause harm. The clear solution is a combination of both goodness and greatness. This is the recipe for a vital leader. There's always going to be tension between morality and motivation, productive energy and constructive energy, but that's what pushes healthy teams to do their best work, in every sense of the word.
Wow, so that was a great video, and it resonated with me so much because it emphasized that to build healthy teams, we need to have great leadership. And so the reason why that video resonated so much is because to the heart-centered life, morality and ethics is integral to great leadership. And in other words, we cannot lead and be effective leaders who can make positive change in the world if we do not have morality and ethics at the core of our leadership style. And so unless, and that relates so much to the heart-centered life, because unless we can align our heart, our intellect, and our gut-based reaction together in a way that promotes more consistent wellness, it's almost impossible to be great leaders who can make effective change in the world around us. So the video talked about the vacant leader first. And a vacant leader is someone who is not able to make change or even have a moral core and is not able to even motivate or inspire people. So the vacant leader is someone who I think really is a gut-based reactive person who doesn't really have good ideas to convey and inspire others. And so people who are in organizations or in teams that have a vacant leader basically are directionless because they don't have the momentum to move forward and to pursue things that are greater than themselves. Whereas an amiable leader is someone who may be essentially heart-centered and focused so much on the heart, with really good ethics, strong morality, but who doesn't have the intellect or who has cultivated the intellectual strength to motivate and inspire others. And so, as the video says, when you have an amiable leader, those teams kind of stagnate and they're not able to move forward because you have a really good in a moral sense, an ethical person, but who doesn't really know how to harness the power of cognition and the intellect to propel the team or the company forward. And that's problematic as well. And of course, there is the maleficent leader who is highly intellectualized, who has the capability to inspire and to motivate people, but who lacks a moral core. And to me, the maleficent leader is one of the most fearful and scary leader to have, because they can inspire people but not have a moral core to ensure that they are acting in the best interest of the community or team that they are supposed to serve. And you can think of leaders like that throughout history. Nazi Germany would be one such example, where you have a leader who could galvanize and inspire a large group of the population with a particular idea, but without that moral core to act in the best interest of the people that they are intended, that they're supposed to serve. You have a really bad regime that will emerge from the leadership of a maleficent leader. And so why the video resonated so much with me, because it tells us that to be a great leader, you also have to be good, right? And good in the sense that not only are you efficient in that you're able to achieve great things, but you're also morally good and are bound by certain codes of ethics that tell you what is the right course of action and what should be done and shouldn't be done. So the vital leader is someone who is able to align their emotions and their moral center with the power of their intellect and their cognition, and also to be intuitive about the right course of action. And that's what a great leader is, and that a great leader is someone who exemplifies heart-centered living, to me. So different leadership styles, you can have different types of leaders who exemplify good morals and sound ethics, and who are also great leaders in that they can actually achieve things that for their teams, for their society, and for the community, and build a better world for the rest of us. And I'm sure that we all can think of leaders who are both good and great in our own lives. But I have here, just as an example, 3 different people who I admire, who I think exemplify good leadership style. So of course, the first person on the left is Colin Powell. And he, as most of you I think will know, served as Secretary of State under President George W. Bush. But he was also a 4-star general, and the power of his intellect and his gut instinct is undeniable. When the US was actually dealing with the repercussions from 9/11, he actually managed to build America's relationship with the international community, and secure a stable coalition internationally in America's war against terrorism. And so he even managed to convince the UN Security Council to launch the invasion against Iraq, to launch the United States invasion in Iraq in 2003, and that was no small feat. So the power of his intellect and his gut instinct in what to say and what to do is undeniable, but we also see a core moral center that I think is so admirable. After he convinced the UN Security Council to sanction America's invasion of Iraq, that was highly controversial. He actually regretted, and he had said that that was a blot, that action was a blot on his record. But his regret is obvious for the role that he played in the invasion of Iraq in 2003. And he realized that his actions at that time were incongruent with what he considered to be morally right. And the fact that he could recognize it and acknowledge it, albeit maybe a bit too late, showed that alignment between intellect, instinct, and heart-centeredness. The next person on the slide is Sandra Day O'Connor, and she is one of my heroes. But she was the first female justice to serve on the Supreme Court. And again, her intellectual and instinctive powers is unquestionable. She sat on the Supreme Court. She was on the Supreme Court. She was the court's swing vote. And she would hold the tie-breaking vote in many key Supreme Court cases. And she eventually became one of the most powerful justices at the time of her tenure. But one example of how her intellect and her instinct worked while she was a Supreme Court justice is that she was key in establishing the court's philosophical stance on abortion cases. And you see that in her decisions in several of the Supreme Court cases that came after Roe versus Wade. But what's truly admirable is not just the power of her intellect and her instinct, but also her heart-centeredness. And we see that she was clearly human in her during her tenure and actually after her tenure as well in the Supreme Court. As evidenced by the qualities of acceptance and resilience as she battled breast cancer twice when she was on the Supreme Court, and there are memoirs of how difficult it was for her to even write her opinions out because it hurt because the surgeries that she had to undergo hurt so much. But she was in the habit of writing her decisions out by hand, and how she struggled with that. But you see a lot of acceptance and resilience, which are essentially heart-centered qualities that she exemplified. She lost her husband to Alzheimer's and had to see him, in inverted commas, fall in love with someone else in his nursing home. And she also had to face her own diagnosis of Alzheimer's a few years later. And those qualities of acceptance, resilience, and strength exemplifies heart-centered living and leadership to me. And of course, the last picture here is Bill Gates, and he doesn't need any introduction, but he was known as an authoritarian, an authoritarian leader while he was the CEO of Microsoft. And he was very firm on the decisions that he thought needed to happen for the company and the path that the company had to take. And he was authoritarian in that sense. But he was also, from what I have read, a leader that encouraged creativity. And creativity is essential to any company and how they eventually emerge in any new economy. And so he encouraged human creativity and original thinking, and he actually also empowered his employees to make innovative decisions within the company. And of course, we know where Microsoft is today, but he definitely had the intellect and the intuition to inspire people to take the right course of action. And so again, with a great leader, the intellect and intuition is kind of given and taken for granted, but the part that's really heart-centered is the combination of the intellect and the intuition with the heart-centered, or the emotions, or the moral compass that we keep talking about and that was referred to in the video. He has said that that you would learn the most from your own unhappy customers, and he cultivated that attitude of continuously learning despite how successful Microsoft was. And that's also essential to heart-centeredness, that you continue to grow and continue to learn as you go on with this heart-centered life path. But beyond that, he has also given back tremendously to society through his philanthropy. So the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has made it its mission to find a cure or a solution to many of the diseases that inflict us as the human race. So HIV, malaria, pneumonia, tuberculosis. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has made it its mission to address some of these infectious diseases. And they also work with poorer communities to provide them with water, sanitation, education, medical treatment, and of course, vaccines. And again, it's that giving back to society. It's reaching back to society from that place of heart-centeredness that exemplifies that moral core that I think is so essential to any great leader. So here we are. So here we have three people who have intellect and intuition that are highly admirable. But it's really their heart-centeredness, the ability to combine intellect, intuition, and morality or ethics that set them apart from any other type of leader. And it's this kind of leadership that that the Heart-Centered Life project wants to cultivate in people. So in the next installment of this video, which will take place at the same time, 10:30 a.m. Central tomorrow, Tuesday the 27th, I will talk about how to be a great leader and give you some ideas on some of the values that a heart-centered leader ought to cultivate in order to lead, in order to be a great leader. And I will also specifically address how someone who has great ideas and who produces content and intellectual property that contains valuable information and knowledge can be a great leader that can impact the world in very positive ways. And even if we think about people who produce intellectual property as someone who writes a novel or someone who produces or composes music or art, that's still content that is highly invaluable with information and knowledge because it gives people a view into how you see the world and your concept and your ideas that are represented in that piece of music or in that piece of art or novel that I think is essential to heart-centered leadership, being able to convey knowledge and information in a way that can influence and inspire others. So I hope this live broadcast is informative. And if you found it useful and helpful, please go ahead and do share it with your network to empower them with information and knowledge and tools on how to live a heart-centered life and be a heart-centered leader. And of course, if there are any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out and ask. So thank you for spending this time with me this morning. I hope that you will tune in tomorrow at 10:30 for the next installment of this live broadcast on what a good leader looks like and how to be a great leader.